Hi, and welcome to the Money Tips No One Told You podcast, presented by First Pioneers Federal Credit Union. Here at First Pioneers, we're passionate about helping not only our members, but our community become financially successful. That success often starts with basic knowledge, things like knowing how different account types work, to understanding terminology, or even tips that make your life easier. The more you know, the more success you will have as you handle your money and your finances. Let's get started. So hi, this is Heather. I'm the Marketing Director with First Pioneers Federal Credit Union. And this episode, we are talking about the buying process of a home. So today we have our lovely friend Robin with us. She is a real estate agent here locally, and she has so many things to tell us. Welcome, Robin. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Heather. Yes, my name is Robin Godeaux, and I'm with the CJ Group at Keller Williams Realty Acadiana. And I have been a real estate agent for almost 4 years now in the area. Absolutely love what I do. I love the home buying process. Absolutely love working with buyers. So I'm excited to talk about all that today.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. And let's get started with some questions. Maybe let's start with, why is it important to have a real estate agent on your team?
So what a lot of people don't know is as a buyer, it is free to work with a real estate agent. So that's a bonus on the buying side. So you have someone working in your corner to shop for homes for you. And we have access to homes that necessarily aren't even on the market yet. So in this market, it is moving so fast. As I'm sure most people in the Acadiana area have seen, as soon as a house goes on the market, it does not sit for very long and it is pending in no time. We get to network with other real estate agents who, we're always in communication with. So if they have a new listing coming up and we have a particular buyer that is looking for something that we have not seen that's on the market already, and they have a listing coming up that fits the needs of that particular buyer, we can ask each other, what each other's needs are. So so it definitely helps to have a real estate agent in your corner whenever we can, get a house that's not on the market and you're not fighting multiple offers. So you can, go ahead and put in an offer where you're not having to go, $5,000 or $10,000 more, so that kind of helps as well, especially whenever you don't pay a real estate agent a dime as a buyer. These sellers pay both sides. They'll pay the buyer's agent and they'll pay their listing agent. So as a buyer, there's really no reason why you should not have a real estate agent in your corner, because there's just multiple perks for that. Like I said, we have access to our MLS. We have access to all the agents who have listings coming up. We understand the market and problem solving along the way. As you go under contract, there's so many things that we've run into. Every situation is different. So you never really kind of know what to expect. But as those problems arise, there's always a solution. And we work really hard to make sure that our buyers and our sellers are protected throughout the process, because things can go awry really, really fast. So to have that, professional behind you, fighting for you, working for you, it's definitely beneficial.
Wow. So many people probably have no idea that all that stuff can happen, and that you can, especially looking at the listings. That's so important right now with all the
Right.
with the houses going so fast when they go on the market.
The biggest thing, I guess, with real estate is, and I didn't realize this until I got into the business, but there's so many emotions involved. You're talking about people's homes. These are people's safe spaces. As we talk about, I know we're talking about buyers, but for the buyers to just be educated on the selling side. Whenever you're buying a home, you're dealing with a seller who's probably very emotional, because they are selling their home where they've made all their memories, where they've raised their children, where they've entertained all their friends and family. So it is a very emotional process for sellers. Let's just say you see a for sale by owner that is selling their house. You definitely want to have a buyer's agent in, representing you, because if you call that for sale by owner, more than likely there's a reason why they don't want to use an agent. Is most of the time it's because they don't want to pay a realtor commission. And you can get involved in all of those emotions from the seller. And if you don't really know how to handle that or deal with it, you're probably never going to be able to get to that closing table, or you're probably never going to be able to secure that home, to know how to work with those types of emotions on the selling side. So it really, like I said, that's another reason to me that's very beneficial to have a real estate agent fighting for you and representing you and negotiating for you.
Wow, that's a really good point. I had never really thought of it that way. Um, that's great information to have. So, can you kind of explain the basic home buying process for our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So to keep it simple, the first step whenever I have a buyer call me and they say, Robin, hey, we're thinking about wanting to buy, what is the first step? Like, what do we need to do? So the first thing that I will always ask, are you getting a loan to buy the house, or are you paying cash? Most people are going to be getting a loan. So I always ask them if they've gotten pre-approved and if they have a particular lender that they're going to be working with. And if they say, no, I haven't gotten pre-approved yet, and no, I don't have a lender, I'll say, well, look, I have some contacts that I work with. I usually try to send two or three, at least three usually, because it is up to them who they prefer to work with. And it depends on their needs as well. So if they are military and they want to use a VA loan, then there's particular lenders out there who specialize in VA loans that, I'll kind of direct them in a couple of different avenues. So I'll try to give them at least three options. I'll let them make the phone calls and decide who they want to work with. But in this market, there is no seller that will look at an offer without a pre-approval letter. So if we're going to start house shopping and you fall in love with a house, there's not much time before that house will probably have multiple offers. So as a buyer, I always prepare them and say, look, you're going to have to be prepared whenever we go look, like have all your ducks in a row, have your pre-approval, like let's know what price range we can shop in, and then we can give it a go and go hard and, find the house that you want. And then I'll start searching for them to find a house. They can search as well. A lot of times they'll send me the houses that they like. I'll set up the showings and we can start shopping for a house. So we'll go to a house, say they fall in love and they're ready to put in an offer. Great. So the first thing I'll ask them is, how much money do you have on hand? Like, do you need all of your money that's in your account to go towards a down payment? Can you afford to pay closing costs? Normally, I would say probably on about $160,000 house, they would need about $5,000 to $6,000 in closing costs. If they don't have that much, then we can always ask the sellers to go ahead and, pay that. Whenever they're ready to put in the offer, we'll discuss those things. And then I always try to tell them that they would need probably about $2,000 in upfront costs throughout the under contract process. So once you go under contract, your inspection period or due diligence period is what they call it, will start the day after we go under contract. So that's usually about a 10-day period. Sometimes it can be more, it just depends, but the average is about a 10-day inspection period. And the buyer can back out for any reason whatsoever during that period. So that's your time to go ahead and do your inspections on the home. And the inspector will only point out possible issues. Like, they won't diagnose anything. So if he suspects there's an issue with the roof or the foundation, or if it might have termites, or just different problems with the home, he will recommend getting a professional to come in and look at the house. So you'll have that inspection time to do all your homework, to have all your inspections done. So if you have your inspection done, say like on the second day, well, then you still have 8 days left to call in a roofer if he suggested, to have the roof looked at, or a foundation expert to get the foundation, inspected, or, professionally inspected. Different things like that. So that's what your inspection period is for. And if you do your inspection and you find out that, oh my gosh, this house needs way too much work, there's too much cost involved, I don't want to do all of that, this isn't the house for me, you can back out. and you're not in breach of the contract, and you'll get your deposit back. So you would have your upfront costs would be your deposit. As soon as you go under contract, you'd have about 72 hours to turn that in. That's anywhere between $500 to $1,000. Normally, I'll just put on the contracts that the buyers will pay a $500 deposit. Some contracts that I've received, the buyer will put $1,000 deposit. So it's anywhere between $500 to $1,000 you'll put down, and that's basically your good faith deposit to let the seller know that, yes, I do want, to pursue purchasing this home, for you to be able to take it off the market, because once you go pending, they stop showings, they stop accepting other offers. So basically it's your good faith deposit, letting the seller know that you're serious about purchasing the home. Then you have your inspections. Those can cost anywhere between $375 to about $500. If you, depending on the size of the home, depending on if the home is on piers, if the inspectors have to crawl under the home, if the inspectors have multiple structures on the home that they need to inspect. So the price can vary, depending on how much they have to inspect. If you want a termite inspection, usually that happens at the same time. That's usually about $75 more. For the termite inspection. I always recommend getting one no matter what. It's worth spending the money to find out, ahead of time than after you've bought the home and, oh, this house has termites. So it's definitely worth the $75 to go ahead and get that done up front. And then if you would move on past inspections, you go back under contract and you're locked into the contract after your due diligence period. So then you would have your appraisal would be next. Depending on the lender, that fee can vary anywhere between $500 to $700. So you'd be prepared to pay for that out of pocket. Some lenders don't require it until at closing. And so that'll kind of be included in your closing costs. Some lenders require it up front before they order the appraisal. So just kind of be prepared, to have that cost up front. So those are your three things. You have your deposit, your inspection, and your appraisal fees. So you would have to have your money up front for those three things while you're under contract before you get to closing. And then come the closing, then that's where you have your down payment and your closing costs. Contract is conditioned on inspections, appraisal, and financing. So as a buyer, those three things are the only reason why you would be able to get out of the contract and get your deposit back. So if the inspection is not to your liking and you don't, like what you find in this house, you can back out as long as you're within your inspection period time frame. If the appraisal comes back low, and like say you're under contract for $200,000, the house only appraises for $180,000, and the seller refuses to sell for $180,000. They still want that $200,000 because that's what you agreed to pay on the contract. They refuse to come down, and you don't have the money, the $20,000 to pay the difference at closing, then that basically means your financing is falling through and you don't have, you can't purchase it. You don't have the money. So you're not locked into the contract at that point. You can back out and you can get your deposit back. Say you move past appraisal, and because this has happened before. We were under contract. It was the day before closing. We had gotten the clear to close from the lender, and then title decided to do one last run on the buyer, and they found like a $30,000 lien against the buyer. Well, we tried multiple solutions to try to continue to move forward to closing, couldn't do it. Financing fell through the day before closing because of this lien that they hadn't found and that she said she wasn't aware of at the time. So that was, another reason it fell through. And even though it was against her, it was due to financing. So she wasn't locked into the contract, and she was able to get her deposit back and couldn't move forward on buying the house. There's just so many different scenarios, but those are the three things that would allow a buyer to back out of the contract: is inspections, appraisals, and financing.
So let's say something substantial is found in an inspection. It's they need a whole new roof, or they need a whole new AC, or there's foundation issues or something like that. Could they come back and renegotiate the price at that point?
Absolutely. So whenever you make an offer on a home, it's basically based on what you can see. So if you can see that there's issues with the flooring, if there's holes in the walls, if there, I mean, sometimes you can tell if a roof, is significantly old or damaged and would need to be replaced. You can make your offer based on that. But if there's something that you can't see, if there's like electrical issues or plumbing issues, if there, if there could be so many other different things, but if there's anything that you find in inspections, you can definitely come back and renegotiate the price. Absolutely. They've also had buyers come back and instead of negotiating the price, they'll negotiate and either ask for money to fix the problem, because you have options as a buyer. So you can either have you can either have the seller fix those things before closing. If it's something that the sellers can do themselves, they'll have to provide pictures that it was fixed. And if they have a professional do it, then they would have to provide receipts that it was taken care of. Or you can just ask for the money. So the seller would give the buyer the money at closing to fix that, if that's agreed upon. And then after the buyers move in, then they can go ahead and take care of the issue with the money they were given after they move in. I always recommend, and it's totally up to the buyer and seller, whatever it takes to get it, to get both parties satisfied. But I like to recommend that the buyers ask for the money which would just basically come out of the seller's proceeds at closing. It gives the buyer, to me, more peace of mind knowing that it's going to get taken care of according to the buyer's standards. If you put that in a seller's hands to go ahead and fix it, then you're basically at the mercy of however the seller wants to handle it. And it may not be necessarily how you would have liked it handled, but because they did what they said they were going to do as fixing it, then you basically can't fight it at that point if it's not done to your standards, because all it'll say on the contract is, seller to fix roof by a professional roofer or whatever. And like, say they have a professional done because they're going to use whoever they want to use, and it wasn't done to your liking, and then the buyer has to end up spending more money after closing because they want it done a certain way. So that's why I always tend to suggest to the buyer, go ahead and ask for, get your estimates during your inspection period, see how much it's going to cost. And then we can in turn ask the seller, for $7,000 to fix this problem on the roof at closing or whatever.
I think there's a lot of people that might enter into a contract on a home and not think about what all could be potentially wrong with it that you couldn't see.
Right.
I can't look at the roof and know how it is,
Because inspections are not required, especially if you're getting a loan. Inspections are not required by anyone. It's an option to a buyer if they want to have one done, but I would never, ever, ever recommend to a buyer not to have an inspection done. I mean, it is well worth the $375 or $400 that you are going to spend. Because I've had buyers say, well, my dad's going to come look at the property. He's going to come and tell me if it's a good buy or not, because I don't want to spend the $400 on inspection. I want to save my money. That has happened multiple times, not to my buyers, because I haven't had any buyers that didn't get an inspection, but I've had other agents that I've helped, because there was a particular situation where there was a couple, they bought this home. It was a house on piers that was completely bricked from roof to ground, and there was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 vents around the bottom of the house for ventilation, so it wasn't ventilated well at all. So they wanted to buy this house. She said, my dad's going to come look at the house, and he's going to tell me if it's a good buy or not. The house was fine whenever they bought it. They went ahead and moved in. I don't even think they were there 2 years, and they started having major issues with the floor because there wasn't enough vents in the bottom of the home, and the crawl space was so low to the ground that to replace the floor or to go and fix anything, you couldn't get under the home to do anything. So they ended up fighting that. Finally ended up deciding to put the house up on the market. They basically lost probably about $35,000, because if they would have just originally gotten an inspection of $400, that probably would have costed no more than $400. in turn, that ended up costing them $35,000 because that would have all been found, and the inspector would have educated them to say, look, you're going to have issues with this floor, if this isn't corrected, or, whatever. So, I mean, it definitely is worth getting an inspection for sure, no matter what you buy or how good the home looks or how much you think daddy knows about the house, to come and look at it for you. Pay a professional, because it's gonna save you thousands and thousands of dollars.
Wow, that is crazy. And I mean, I guess you don't think about that sometimes up front.
And people don't, I mean, they see a deal, well, I'm gonna save $400, I don't need to have an inspection done, but it's like you don't realize how much could be hidden in a home, whenever, if you can't see it on the surface, I think, well, it looks good, it looks great. And then you don't see all of those possible, issues that could arise, a couple years down the road, or, if something's not made correctly, like what that could actually do to a home after a couple years. So it's definitely worth it to have an inspection done.
So you talked a little bit about how to make an offer in that process. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
How to make an offer is basically, of course, like, you go look at your house, and what we do too is we call it running comps. It's basically looking at other comparable homes in the market to see if the house that we're looking at is overpriced or not. There are some sellers that are adamant about getting a certain dollar amount for their house. And there are some agents that will agree, even knowing that the house is overpriced, they'll still agree to put it on the market at that price. So we want to make sure that our buyers are protected, that they're not overpaying for a home, especially if you're going to be paying cash, because a lender will require an appraisal. So, a lender will pull the comps, or the appraiser, I'm sorry, will pull the comps, the comparable properties, and look at that for you if you're using a lender. If you're going to pay cash for a house, nobody's requiring an appraisal. So you don't know if you're overpaying for a house or not. So that's why you have a real estate agent to go ahead and run those comparable properties for you, to go ahead and look, just to make sure, that you are not overpaying. So whenever we go ahead and put an offer in, that also kind of helps whenever we're comparing properties to see, well, how much could we possibly, negotiate on this deal? Like, are they already priced low? Like, do we have the option to go ahead and, ask them to cover all your closing costs? Could we maybe shoot a little bit higher and you still have some equity in your home? Because, every situation is different. Every seller is selling for a different reason. Sometimes it's for financial purposes. Sometimes it's for a move, and, they have so much equity in their home. They have a lot of wiggle room they just need to get out of it, so sometimes you can get a good deal. Sometimes they haven't been in the home long at all. Maybe, they've only lived in it for a year, and, they have no equity at all, and, they have no room to negotiate. So you just kind of have to look at, you have to ask a lot of questions. We work very closely with the listing agents, and, find out a lot of things up front to kind of know where we need to be with our offer. So there's really a lot, that kind of goes into it, because of course, you don't want to go in $20,000 or $30,000 lower than where they're asking, because that'll upset them, and then they don't want to work with you. And then, because like we discussed earlier, you initially put your first offer in based on what you can see. And then whenever you have your inspections, there's possible more negotiating to come along with asking them for more money, or coming off a purchase price, or asking them to fix certain things, which could in turn cost the seller more money, if they need to fix stuff. So you don't want to beat them up too much in the beginning, because you still want them to work with you during that inspection period as well, and to be nice and to do those things that will make you feel comfortable about moving forward with the house. So that's what I kind of try to educate my buyers on too, is, we're going to try to get the best deal for you, but as well, we want to get the house for you if this is the house. It's kind of two totally different spectrums. The seller wants top dollar, and then the buyer wants a deal. When it comes to putting in the offer, you definitely will try to get you the best price up front. But like I said, you got to keep in mind, there is more negotiating to come in that inspection period.
Right. And so when you say comps, y'all are looking at the price of other properties in that same area to get an idea of what other properties are going for?
Correct. Well, it would be sold properties. So We only look at houses that have sold, what have actually sold for. So, because I mean, you can have a house that's on the market for 250,000, but that doesn't mean that that's what it'll appraise for, or that's what it will sell for. So we only look at what properties that are comparable that have actually sold, because that is based off of usually what they appraised for and what a buyer is willing to pay for them. So, like say you have a $250,000 home, but it only sold for 210,000. We're not gonna price ours if it's the same exact house at 250. We'll probably be closer to the $210,000 mark if it's super comparable. Now, if you have more square footage, or if you have granted and the other one didn't, if the other one is outdated and yours is completely renovated. I mean, we looked at all of those different things, to kind of get an idea of how to price it. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into pricing a house, just kind of figuring out if a house is overpriced and just kind of where we should be. But the listing agent actually should have kind of done all of that for the seller up front. So hopefully the house is pretty much priced where it should be. But as a buyer's agent, we'll always double check those comparable properties just to make sure. Because like I said, there are some agents that'll go ahead and put, sometimes you just have a stubborn seller and they'll, go ahead and put the house on the market. Because I've done that a couple of times. I'll say, well, look, we'll start here. We'll let the market kind of tell us, if we're not getting showings within the first week or two, we need to drop the price, and so I'll do it for them, just to kind of let them really understand, okay, like you're not going to sell your house at this price. So that's, kind of what we'll do. So that's why if we see one and we go ahead and make an offer, like as a buyer's agent, we'll run comps anyway, just to make sure that house isn't overpriced for our buyer.
Thanks for that. Because I think some people, like you said, you think, oh, my house has to be worth this much. And, not every house is the same, and everyone's going to have different square footage and different amenities and all these things. So, it's, nothing is going to be apples to apples, it seems. I find a lot of people, when they're buying a house, they don't think about things like a homeowners association, and that the home they're looking at may not just be a property. It may be actually part of an association, which comes with fees and things like that. What's your experience with that? What can you tell our buyers about that?
A lot of my buyers will come to me and they'll pretty much already know if they want to be in a neighborhood that has an HOA or not. A lot of them will automatically just think, I don't want to be in somewhere that has a homeowners association because I don't want to be told what to do. Like, I want to live in my house. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do in my yard. I want to be able to build whatever I want to build, kind of thing, which I totally get it. Other people will say, I definitely want to live in a neighborhood that has an HOA because the HOAs are there to keep property value up. So you never have to worry about someone coming in and painting their house next door to you hot pink, or trashing up the front yard, or just different things. Like, you don't have to worry about that. So that's basically what the HOA is there for. It's to hold the property value and to keep the neighborhoods up and taken care of. If you have a neighborhood that has a community pool, or that has boulevards or a park or something like that, the HOA is there to help maintain those things for the neighborhood. Our neighborhood, for example, we have an HOA, but we don't have anything like that. But it is there to, like I said, keep the property value up, to keep the homes from, the yards being all overgrown, and, because that affects property value, for the house next door and different things like that. HOAs, or the homeowners association, it's usually someone that lives in the neighborhood, is elected president to oversee it all. And then each member of the neighborhood or the community will pay a certain fee, and that's either monthly, or you can pay it twice a year, or you can pay it yearly. So most of the time we'll see it either the HOA fee will be paid monthly, or yearly. So that's usually the two most common ones. And they can vary anywhere between $60 a month to $300, $400 a month. Like, it really just depends. But if you are looking for a house and you see a house that you like, and it does have a homeowners association fee attached with it, I would definitely run that by the lender that you're working with, because that can definitely factor in, because that's going to go along with your monthly note if it's something that's due every month. Even yearly, they'll factor that in to your debt to income ratio, I believe. Like I said, I kind of always refer back to the lender when it comes to that. But if it is one that is paid monthly, that is paid along with your house note. So a lender will definitely take into consideration how much an HOA fee is to make sure that the buyer still qualifies for that particular home.
Considering some HOAs can have restrictions on things like structures and things like that around your home, would it be beneficial, or is it possible for a buyer to try to sort of see what those rules are before they buy? Would someone be willing to share that with them?
Absolutely, yes. So those actually should be attached to the listing that normally only realtors have access to. So if you are shopping on Zillow or realtor.com as a buyer, you are probably not going to see the bylaws attached to that particular listing. But on our MLS, it's our multiple listing service. That's where all of our agents post all of the new listings and that realtors only have access to. We have a section, and it's called the document section on each listing. So we will upload the restrictions and bylaws under documents. We'll upload the property disclosure, which has all of the seller's information that they've disclosed about the property. They'll have the flood disclosure. They will have the lead paint disclosure, the sewage disclosure if the house has a septic tank. The lead paint disclosure is usually only on houses that are older than that were built before 1973, I believe. That is required to have a lead paint disclosure. So that the document section is where we'll upload all of those things. So if you have a home that you have listed and it does have an HOA, the bylaws and restrictions should definitely be uploaded to that particular listing. But like I said, that's why another reason why it's beneficial to use an agent, because we have access to all of that for our buyers.
Oh, and that's such great information to have. I mean, to know all of those things going in gives you a better idea of what owning the home is really going to cost you besides your mortgage, you know?
Absolutely. And the restrictions as well, because ours isn't that strict. Like I said, the neighborhood that we live in, our bylaws, it's only maybe 2 or 3 pages. I think it's nothing that major. But then you can get into some neighborhoods where, I mean, you're down to, like you said, the style of the mailbox, what colors you can paint your home, where you can park, if you can leave your garage door open at any time or not. If your garage door is open for more than an hour a day, they can come and flag it. It can get really, really crazy, and the bylaws can get very lengthy in some of these neighborhoods. So that's why we like to put that up on the listing, just to see, it works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. So that kind of gives you an idea, like, do I even want to pursue living in this neighborhood or not? Because some of the restrictions can get kind of crazy.
And you definitely want to know that before that contract goes all the way through. So you can make those decisions. Yeah. That's amazing. I had no idea about a lot of that. Another thing I think people do a lot of times when they're looking for a home is they get caught up in, oh, this is a really neat looking, or oh, it's a certain square footage and that's how big I want my home to be. But there's really a lot more that a buyer should be thinking about besides that. What kind of things should they look for besides just, oh, it's the square footage?
Right. So whenever I have a new buyer and I don't know anything about the buyer yet, like I don't know anything about their wants or needs, I'll have a particular set of questions that I'll always go over and ask them. So a lot of them, they want me to immediately start sending them homes. So I cannot start sending you homes until I get an idea of what you want. Some people know exactly what they want and some people don't. And that's kind of what I kind of narrow it down as we go along the process. So some of the things that I'll start with is I always ask, how many bedrooms and bathrooms do you absolutely need? So, they'll tell me most of it's 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Sometimes it's a 4 bedroom is an absolute necessity. Sometimes they just need an extra room if they work from home and they need an office. So I'll start with that. I'll definitely need to know how many bedrooms and bathrooms you need. The biggest thing is what location. Like some people just say, like, I just want to be in the outskirts of Lafayette. Well, do you want to be in the Youngsville, Broussard, area? Or do you want to be in the Rain Crowley area? And if they're like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as I'm in the outskirts. Well, I can do a search based on that. So location is definitely one of the biggest things. And it's, why do you want to be in that location? Like, do you just want to be in the country, or do you want to be in a particular school zone, or do you need to be in the outskirts because it's closer to your work? So I'll kind of break it down a little bit further, because that kind of helps me understand the buyer's needs and wants, because I'm not going to take you to look at homes in Rain and Crowley if you need to be by work in Youngsville, Broussard. They don't really think about it until I start breaking down the questions, and they're like, oh, we just thought we wanted to be in the outskirts, but yeah, I guess it does make sense to be 10 minutes from work than 45 minutes from work. Sometimes I'll ask about square footage. There's usually a big range whenever it comes to square footage. I'll say, like, well, what's your minimum? And then, I was like, you don't want less than, 1,200 square feet, or do you not want less than 2,000 square feet? Like, just kind of depends on their needs. And so then I'll just kind of start with that. And then I'll just tell them, I'll say, okay, well, I'll start with the amount of bedrooms and baths. I'll start with the square footage amount, and then I'll start with price point and location, because, I'll know their price point because should already be pre-approved. So those are the four main things: is location, price, square footage, and bedrooms and baths. And then as we start searching, I'll always tell them, as we kind of learn, or as I kind of learn more of what you want and, what you like, and you can kind of see what's out there in that price range, then we can kind of start narrowing it down more to, you don't want anything without a fenced in yard, or you actually do want something with a pool, or you actually really feel like you need a shop, or maybe you actually really feel like you need an office, or, we're looking at all of these 3 bedrooms, or say you wanted a 4th bedroom, but you're looking at all these 4th bedrooms, but the bedrooms are so tiny. Maybe it makes sense that you have a 3-bedroom house with an office, or, a 3-bedroom house that you can add on, because you can't make bedrooms bigger. So, we'll just kind of can tweak the search as we go along. But those are really the 4 main things that we start with: is location, price point, bedrooms and baths, and square footage.
That's awesome. I mean, just really, I think sometimes, like I said, you just start out with, oh, I know I want a house, and maybe they want brick, or they want whatever they want, but then they don't think about the rest of it and how it's going to affect their commute and where their kids are going to go to school and all those things. There's just so much to think about when you buy a home, and it can be so overwhelming. That's why people like you are handy to help folks make it through that process.
And then flood zones as well. I mean, the 2016 flood really freaked a lot of people out. I feel like we're kind of starting to get away from that, a little bit. People are starting to get amnesia a little bit whenever it comes to that. But I do have a lot of buyers that'll ask, well, did the house ever flood? And if it did, they're like, we don't want anything that ever flooded. So, there's a few things that I cannot filter out whenever I do searches. And that is one of them. I really hope one day that is something that we can filter on. As we do our searches, I will always say, look, if there's any that y'all are interested in, send me the address. I'll look up and see if it's in a flood zone, if they're adamant about not being in one. And when I say not in a flood zone, I mean a flood zone that requires flood insurance. So there's 4 different types of flood zones. So you have flood zone X, which does not require flood insurance. Doesn't necessarily mean that the house won't flood, because there were a lot of homes in flood zone X that did flood for 2016. And the sea level that Louisiana is in, pretty much everything is in a flood zone. But flood zone X is the only zone that a lender will not require flood insurance, or for you to carry flood insurance. Then there's flood zone A, which is a little bit more at risk of flooding, but your flood insurance would be the cheapest in required flood insurance. You can still carry flood insurance if you want. If you have a house in flood zone X, that really would be your cheapest, because your elevation is higher, so you're not as much at as much risk of flooding. So your flood insurance wouldn't be expensive at all, but it's not required. Flood zone A, that's where it gets a little bit, it's more expensive, but it is still your cheapest required flood insurance amount. And then you have flood zone AE, which is higher risk, so your flood insurance starts to go up. And then you are in the last one is a floodway. And that one is basically, that is going to be probably really expensive flood insurance. And it may be difficult to even find an insurance company to cover that to write a policy in a floodway, especially right now with the way that insurance, actually home insurance, flood insurance as well has gone up this past year. It was crazy. I know there was some companies are leaving Louisiana, and then the companies that are still here doing coverage, some of them aren't even writing flood policies in some of the areas. So it's kind of crazy. Flood insurance has gone up. So that's another reason too. Whenever you're getting pre-approved for a home, you always want to check to make sure if it's in a flood zone that's going to require flood insurance or not, because you want to make sure you're still qualified, because that will become part of your note. It does get escrowed into your monthly note. So you definitely want to make sure that that home and you still qualify for the loan if it is in a flood zone that requires flood insurance.
That is such a new factor that we've all had to deal with after those historic floods that came through. I can remember houses all over the city and, in Baton Rouge and places like that, water's never gone near those homes. And now they're considered in flood zones. So now they're having to carry extra insurance, which a lot of people just don't think about, when they're making all these plans. So yeah.
And even though you buy a home in flood zone X, the flood maps are constantly changing. I don't know what makes them change, because when you buy a home, your elevation of your house doesn't change. But there's been a lot where they'll buy a house in flood zone X, and then the flood maps will change, and now they're in flood zone A, where, if they're still carrying a note, if they still have a mortgage, then they will be required to carry flood insurance at that point. So it's kind of crazy. So you just kind of have to be prepared, for those types of things.
Wow. That would be a big surprise for a lot of people when they all of a sudden have to add that kind of expense to their monthly or to their insurance premiums. My goodness, the flood insurance is insane. Well, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't even think of that. That's a great little tidbit, especially around here, or really anywhere that you are, that there's a lot of waterways and things like that. You may not even realize how close you are to one that then affects your property. So that's a big deal. Well, Robin, thanks so much for being with us today. This is a lot of amazing information that I know our home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, are really going to love to hear. It's really things that when you're trying to teach your kids as they're coming up and teaching them the things they need to know, it's just so hard to know all of this and be able to convey it to them. So thanks so much for coming by and sharing all that with us. And before we go, is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners about yourself and about your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I am with the CJ Group at Keller Williams Realty. And on our team at the CJ Group, we have about 17 agents that work with us on our team. So whenever you hire me as an agent, you're not only getting me, but you're getting my entire team that helps work for you. Like I said, we network together, not only with just the members on my team, but I network with all agents across the board of all brokerages. So whether or not you see a home for sale by Ladder and Bloom or by Dream Home Realty or any other brokerage, I can show you any house on the market. My real estate professional career is not just solely with Keller Williams. So that is my brokerage. That's who holds my license. But I can sell you anything that is on the market, whether it is land, whether it is commercial, whether it's with any brokerage that has it listed. I can help you buy anything that is literally real estate. So we do have our own commercial real estate agent. His name is Rusty Steele. He works for the CJ Group. He is actually part owner of the CJ Group. So if we have someone that wants to purchase a business, or if they have a business that they want to sell and it's, zoned commercial, you have to be specialized in commercial real estate. You have to have a commercial real estate license to be able to be part of that transaction. So what we do is we partner with Rusty. If we have our own clients, that want to go that route and they want to work with us specifically, we'll just partner with Rusty as our agent to be part of that transaction, to be covered under his license. So we'll work together to get the deal done. He's super knowledgeable. He's an amazing agent. He does residential and commercial. He is definitely amazing to partner with. I've done multiple commercial deals with him. So I have him in my back pocket. And then we have so much real estate experience on our team. Have agents that have been in the business for over 20 years. We have new agents coming on. So literally any type of transaction, like I said, that you would be interested in. I mean, we have the knowledge and the expert. If I don't know the answer, I know exactly who to go to get the answer and can get the job done for you. So not only do you have me, but you're getting a whole team of agents working together to get this deal done. We do kind of try to keep it in-house a lot, so that helps as well. So if I have a listing coming up, I know the first 17 agents that I'm going to ask if they have a buyer for it. Most of the time they do, so we can get the deals done very quickly. So it definitely is good. I love being on a team, to have, that camaraderie and like all of that help to be able to get, for my buyers and my sellers. And then we kind of just give each other that, I guess, that business, or that we help each other with our clients. So that's, where I'm not out here by myself, trying to do it all alone. So it helps a lot being on a team. I love it.
Well, you can't go wrong with that, can you? Well, again, thank you so much. We hope everyone listening got a lot of great information today that can help them as they go out looking for their new home. And we will see you guys again next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You've just watched our YouTube version of our Money Tips No One Told You podcast. There is also a blog version on our website at firstpioneers.com. You can always find us at any of our branches in Lafayette or New Iberia, Louisiana, on our website or on any of our socials. We're here to help you in any way that we can, and we really appreciate you watching. See you next time.